rolling. Good morning, welcome. Welcome to Building Student Capacity for Independence. My name is Anna Kay, and I am joined by my two brilliant colleagues, Andrea Quintana and Rachel Hortzman, and we are so excited to connect and collaborate with you all this morning. To get us started, we're going to ask for you to do a quick share out. We're going to ask you to share something that has brought you joy this week. We're going to give you 2 minutes for this. You can stand up and go get a physical object, something that brings you joy, and just hold it up to the camera. You can pop something that has brought you joy in the chat, or maybe you want to draw a picture and hold that up to the screen. You can raise your hand and unmute, or you can use emojis to communicate to us something that brought you joy this week. You can see that the little Bernie Sanders memes have brought us a lot of joy this week, so that's what we are sharing with you. You have agency and autonomy in how you choose to engage with this activity, which we'll talk about a little later, is an important component to support student independence. So I'll give you about 2 minutes to show us what has sparked joy for you. So if you're just joining us, we're inviting folks to share what has sparked joy for them this week. Oh, I see parents celebrated a 50th wedding anniversary, setting up the home gym. Oh, our new librarian is amazing. Oh, librarians are such a blessing. My foster kitties, spending time with my granddaughter. Oh, wow. Closing on a home, congratulations. Spending time with college-age kids. Cotton candy grapes, I love those. Knitting and sewing. Oh, and I see some folks in the chat or in the screen holding up pictures. Embroidery. Thank you. This was such a wonderful way to start this space. I appreciate you all taking a moment to share some joy in your life with us. So we're going to go ahead and jump on into our agenda. We're going to start today about the why, the theories on student competence and student autonomy and how those foster student independence. We're going to give you some actionable tools and strategies to try in your classroom. And then we're also going to provide some space for reflection and think about how does this learning from this session transfer to the work you're doing in your classroom. So I'm going to kind of direct our focus onto the left side of the screen. I'm going to ask you to just take a moment of self-reflection. You don't have to share this out, but just thinking, what level of independence do your students currently have? And what does that look like in the virtual setting? Just takes a moment to think that over. And then I'm going to ask us for share out as you feel comfortable using the chat. And just drop in there, what skills do your students need in order to demonstrate independence? These may be skills they already demonstrate or skills they still need to work on. What are these skills and subsets of skills that students need to really demonstrate independence? You can go ahead and pop that in the chat as you feel comfortable. Self-motivation, time management, resiliency, that's such an important one. Time management, stamina, confidence, persistence, resilience. Reading the directions, yes, that's an important one. Problem solving, especially with technology, yes. Independence level is directly related to my kids' academic progress, right? And that's that skill of being able to kind of see their own progress, right? Asking for help, motivation. These are excellent. So on our next slide, we know that in order for students to demonstrate social and academic independence, they need opportunities to practice a variety of skills, many of which you put into the chat and you can see illustrated here on this Menti as well. So unpacking all of these skills is complicated and would make for probably a full day PD. So during our time together, we're going to focus on two facets of independence, one being student competence and the second being student agency. We're going to start with a theory behind that and then jump into some practical tools that support those two areas. So let's jump into competence and kind of what we mean by competence. So a lot of the information from this slide was taken by a book called The Caring Teacher, written by Cassetta and Wilson. It's wonderful. And in the slide deck, if you click on the picture of the book, it'll take you to the publisher if you're interested in reading it yourself. So the authors of this book explain that when we think of competence, right, student competence, we may automatically think of grades or a student's proficiency level in terms of a specific standard. But perhaps we can begin broadening that definition of competence so that when we think of competence, we include physical skills and accomplishments. Cognitive knowledge and skills, including those cognitive knowledge and skills that students learn at home, right? And not necessarily in the classroom setting, as well as social and emotional knowledge and skills. So all of these competencies are really important. But today we're going to focus on cognitive competence and emotional competence because these are going to be the most pertinent in the work we're doing in the virtual setting, but then also in looking forward to the hybrid setting. And as we move into hybrid, we may consider focusing on cognitive and emotional competence opportunities that translate really well from the virtual setting into that hybrid model. So if you look at the visual there, we have kind of our four columns of competence: physical, cognitive, social, and emotional. And I want us to look at that second column, the cognitive competence. Now, this came from that book, The Caring Teacher, but this book was obviously written before we went into virtual teaching or before we were really talking about hybrid learning. So I'm going to ask for another moment of reflection. In looking at that list there, what can we add to that list? What other opportunities to support student competence in the virtual setting or the hybrid setting can we add to this list? And I'll just give you a moment to, again, drop that into the chat. These are those learning opportunities that we are already using in our classroom to support that competence and therefore that independence. So this might be around using a certain tech tool. Yeah, exactly, Amanda. Knowledge of tech platforms. Absolutely. Knowing when to take a break. That's important for us as adults as well. And maybe something we need to explicitly teach, right? This isn't a skill that just most kids come into our classrooms with. How about how kids share their ideas? How they share their ideas with their peers in the virtual setting, and then how perhaps that might look in the hybrid setting. What to prioritize. So as you can continue, maybe more ideas will pop up as we continue. Feel free to pop those in the chat. Participating in a daily recording of their own data, paired with setting goals and reflection. Corinne, that's beautifully stated. Absolutely. These are important skills. So now for the sake of time, we'll just pop on over to the next slide, but continue to put those ideas in the chat. It's always good to have a running list of ideas going. So as we continue to mold opportunities for students to demonstrate competence, we as teachers also give feedback and validation of that competence, right? So students are recognizing it in themselves. And as we do this, we gradually begin to see an increased sense of emotional and academic confidence and security. And this is a really important for both academic and social and emotional risk-taking, which again is another building block of that independence. So we know that we're already providing a lot of opportunities for students in our virtual classroom to show this competence and to work on building that independence. And so in some instances, we might not necessarily need to do anything new. We maybe just need to be a little more explicit or intentional about discussing and reinforcing student competence as we're designing our lesson plans. And as we work on that competence and as students become more fluent in each of these 4 areas of competence, it's also important to provide opportunities for student autonomy and agency in the academic and emotional context. I know even as an adult learner, I am more likely to participate and engage with the work when I feel like I have some voice or some say in it, or when I feel like I'm being seen and heard as a person. And that's very true of our students as well. So students we know who feel that their voice and perspective and interests are heard and validated demonstrate increased levels of engagement, and again are more likely to attend class in that virtual sense, and then perhaps even complete the work in the virtual and hybrid setting. So again, of course, you are the experts just as much as we are. So we're going to take another quick moment of reflection and ask you to drop into the chat, how are you currently providing opportunities for student autonomy, student independence and voice and agency in your classroom? Again, specifically thinking of those ideas of voice, choice, perspective, and interests. How does that currently look in your classroom? Passion projects, choice boards, math activity choice boards. I know teachers, some teachers that do genius hour, breakout rooms, free write, picking their own writing topic, Flipgrid, Jamboard, voice typing responses. Okay, so also giving choice in how students are completing the work rather than the content of the work, absolutely. Trial and error is absolutely a part of it, right? As we're getting to know this new platform along with our students. Friday surveys. Oh, each day I have a question of the day and the students get to share their ideas in journal writing. Breakout rooms, yeah. Absolutely, these are great. Again, we encourage you continue to populate this chat, but for our next section, I'm going to turn it over to Rachel, and she's going to give us some more information about motivation as we move into those practical tools and applications.
Thanks, Anna. So Anna spoke so beautifully to motivation and engagement of our students. So this is a really short video, just 3 minutes, by Daniel Pink. And he's going to share just some powerful words about motivation. So if you have something you're taking notes on, it might be helpful to have that out and jot down any big ideas that are standing out to you as we watch this.
My name is Daniel Pink. I'm the author of Drive, A Whole New Mind, and other books. And I want to talk about motivation. Now, all of us have certain instincts about what motivates people. And our instincts are sometimes right and sometimes wrong. And if you look at 50 years of behavioral science, it allows us to recalibrate our understanding of motivation and then deploy that understanding in the classroom. Here is the key point from this 50 years of research. There's a certain kind of reward that we use in organizations. Psychologists call it a controlling contingent reward. I call it an if-then reward. If you do this, then you get that. If you do this, then you get that. We use all kinds of rewards in organizations and in schools, but this is the mainstay. If you behave, then you get a pizza party. If you score well on this test, then you get a gold star. Here's what the science tells us about if-then rewards. If-then rewards are extraordinarily effective for simple, short-term tasks. We like rewards, they get us to focus, and so when the task is simple, algorithmic, where you're just following a recipe, where the time horizon is short, if-then rewards are actually pretty effective. But the same body of science tells us that if-then rewards are not very effective for more complex, creative work with longer time horizons. Why? They get us to focus too narrowly, we don't look expansively, and we sometimes exhaust our motivational energy. And so, if you look at what school is, if you look at what education is, we want to be equipping students with these more higher level, conceptual, thoughtful kinds of skills. And yet we're too often using motivational mechanisms that are actually appropriate for the more simple, reductive kinds of skills. So what we need to do is upgrade our motivational operating system so that we treat people well and foster enduring motivation by giving students autonomy, mastery, and purpose. Autonomy is a sense of self-direction, some sovereignty, some control over what they do, when they do it, how they do it. Mastery is the sense of getting better at something that matters, getting feedback on something that's important, and making progress. And purpose is knowing not simply how to do something, but why you're doing it in the first place. And if we recast our notions of motivations, rely less on these if-then carrots and sticks, and more on what we know about intrinsic motivation, creating environments in the classroom and in the school itself, in the district, that foster autonomy, mastery, and purpose, we can do right by our children and prepare them for their future.
All right. So if you saw there right at the end, that idea came from his book called Drive. So if you are interested in learning more about that, that might be a resource you check out. And also at the end of the slides, I linked a video to one of his longer TED Talks where he speaks more to motivation. But I just love that idea about thinking about intrinsic motivation, right? I know in my teacher training, so often those if-then statements were a huge part of my training to motivate students, having a prize bucket or something to look forward to on Friday. But our long-term goals is for our students to have some intrinsic motivation where they want to learn. So as we think about those big words that they stood out to me, at least, autonomy, mastery, and purpose, how can we start to let students find autonomy, mastery, and purpose in their learning so that they're intrinsically motivated to learn, to become self-directed learners, right? So if you have come to seen any of the Fast and Fabulous sessions, we share this definition every time, and I just love it so much because it talks about engagement, right? Motivation and engagement go hand in hand. And engagement is a lot more than students having their cameras on or looking directly at you. We know that sometimes students can space out even though they're looking right at you. But really engagement is that curiosity and interest and optimism about learning. And that's what we're hoping to foster for our students. So we are going to move now into some practical examples that you can start using, and I'm going to pass it off to Andrea to share some K2 specific examples.
All right, so we're going to start by thinking about how to create some independence in our earliest learners. And this is something that really pulls at me because, as you just heard with Daniel Pink, those carrots and sticks don't necessarily work. And if we can start building at our earliest stage, helping our students to really find some motivation beyond the if-then statements. They're going to be able to carry those with them forever. And so really helping students to get inspired for their learning is going to be explicitly taught. This isn't something that they're going to come into school already knowing about. But the one thing that students in their earliest ages do crave the most is the relationship. So how can teachers in the K-2 area really serve as the coach for the students and help them set some goals and plan out their learning and really be intentional with what's happening in the classroom to help students really drive what's going to happen to their learning. And so as teachers and students work on self-assessments, really helping students to say, did I do my best work today? Did I create the outcome of this learning that I hoped to have, is really going to help those students drive their own learning. And remember that especially in kinder and first, second grade, these have to be explicitly taught routines. And so I'm asking, how are you building in self-assessments into your daily routines? How are you building in goal setting with your students every day so that it becomes part of their learning and they know exactly what's expected? Now, also very important, and we heard it again in that video, is practice and fail. These ideas of routines and students creating these learning objectives on their own isn't going to happen overnight. It's not going to be something that's easily accepted by them, because they do need to learn to practice. They do need to learn what it's like when they don't achieve the goal that they hoped for. So how are we going to be able to really build up those routines for our students and really make sure that it's helping them to become the learner that they want to be? You know, I taught kindergarten for a really long time, and one of the mottos we used to have was, you can't ever say that you can't do it. And so the students knew that no matter how hard the task was at hand, they had to give it a try, even if that meant that they couldn't do it. But really helping them build up their own confidence and not say, I can't do it at the first sight, because oftentimes they would be able to do it, but it did take a little bit of practice and it did take a little bit of repetition. And so really learning that grit, right? Really learning that I'm going to be okay even if I can't do it today. I'm going to keep practicing until I get better at and am able to do it tomorrow. So while these routines aren't going to be easy and they aren't something that comes naturally, it will definitely be worth it for both you and for your students as they really start to build in some of those independent learning skills early on in their educational career. So some of the examples to be able to do this have already been mentioned in the chat by many of you, and really helping the students come up with organizers to build this independence, especially in a virtual learning atmosphere. It's definitely different than if you were in a face-to-face atmosphere, but thinking if you were virtual or hybrid, having your students create some kind of a checklist, a task card. I heard choice boards mentioned often, and even schedules that appeal to their own need and desire. Something where they can check off every day whether or not they did it and give themselves some reflection on how well they did it, how much effort they put into that, and what steps they might need to do better tomorrow. I also created some links to templates here in case you needed some support in getting these started in your classrooms. But thinking about ways that students can start to build in their, did I do this? And did I do this to my best ability, kind of accountability for themselves in their daily routines. Now, this is just what your day could look like in terms of getting organized. But what about thinking about how our students can get organized with creating their own outcomes, which is definitely something that's motivating for our students and helps them build in that independence. So it's not only did I do it, but did I do it with an outcome that provides motivation because I was curious about this, or because it appeals to my passions or my interests. So even creating some choice boards where the students get to choose the outcome and really pulls in all of the different learning styles of your students. So maybe their objective is to read a book and find some vocabulary words, but maybe the outcome of how they show you that learning gives them a little bit of choice. So here are some additional choice boards that could create options for those exact ideas. How are students able to build on what they already know and can do and help show you what your learning objective and goal was for the end of that unit? So rather than everything be paper and pencil or everything be video and audio, maybe some things are artistic, maybe some things pull in some of their own passions and curiosities, and you can get to know so much more about your students by giving them a little bit of choice. Now, a lot of these choices are going to be dependent on the relationship you build with your students. So don't ever take for granted that opportunity and time that it takes, because the more you know about the students, the more choices that meet their needs you're going to be able to find. And so these are just a couple of the options to kind of get your brain thinking and started on how to create independent learners from your students in the organizational piece, as well as to appeal to them in an outcome way. And if you have other ideas, we would love to learn from you as well. So please drop those ideas in the chat for us now, and we would love to learn what's working for your students in terms of really creating independence as well as building on that autonomy. And Rachel's going to share some 3-5 ideas with us now.
Thanks, Andrea. So I'm going to echo a lot of what Andrea said, but also build off of that, because our 3-5 students might have more capacity to be directive of their schedules and the outcomes of their learning. They may have had some practice with this, hopefully in a K2 setting, so that they can take it a little bit further. We also know that our 3-5 students might be able to read and write a little more independently, so we can just level up some of these ideas to provide even more autonomy and independence for those students. So organization may not come easily for your students. Organization does not come easily for some adults. We have to explicitly teach and reinforce that skills, and for some people that just takes more effort. They have to be mindful and thoughtful about that and intentional, right? So they may need some reminders, whether that's daily or weekly, to help them practice those skills. And so echoing Andrea, having different options of agendas, calendars, to-do lists. I think reflections are really important in 3-5, so they can reflect on goals that they've had for the day, or even just, did I complete my work today? Where was I at? What do I need to, how do I need to readjust my day tomorrow to complete any work that I didn't finish? That takes some metacognitive thinking of our students. And choice boards again. So Andrea shared some great examples of that, and that can be easily adapted for a 3-5 setting. So I'm going to be focusing more on agendas and calendars and how your 3-5 students can utilize those. Now, as we transition to a hybrid setting, whenever that may be, your students will benefit from learning to navigate a school and a home setting. They're going to have to balance those two schedules, right? And at home, they might have to be a little bit more independent. So we can help foster those skills by teaching them to thoughtfully use their calendars and agendas. So this is something I actually do in my own planner. I use symbol codes for my work tasks and my home tasks. So I use squares for anything work related, and I actually use circles for anything home related, but you could choose any type of symbol code that you'd like with your students just to help them visualize their day and learn to balance their time. In 3-5, your students might have some extracurricular activities. Even though that still is probably online for them, they have to balance a lot of different activities already. And as they go up to middle and high school, they're going to have to do that even more, starting to balance different classes and possibly more extracurricular activities. So this can help them learn to navigate that, but then also being able to schedule fun things. Maybe that's part of their reward system. They add in that they get to play games with their family or video games at the end of their day. If they learn to schedule in some of those things, they'll be motivated to complete some of those other tasks. So I want to start with a tool that might already be familiar to you. which is your Google Classroom calendar. If you're working with 3-5 students, you might be using that platform as a tool. And as you assign assignments in Google Classroom, you have the option to select a due date and even a time. Now, your students can access this calendar from Google Classroom, and you'll notice there are times, it has the link to the assignment and the name of it. So if you are thoughtful about the way that you assign assignments for your students, this can be a great scaffold for kids who are new to agendas or calendars. And it ensures that everybody has the same expectations, that they can see it all in one place, and it will help prepare them again for middle and high school as they have to balance different classes, right? They will likely, Google Classroom is probably not going to go away. And so they can start learning to navigate how to use that themselves. And then they can take this calendar and create their own to-do list. I see I have 4 assignments due this week. I need to finish this one first because it's due first. How can I organize my to-do list to make sure that I complete my tasks, but in an order that feels good to me, right? And then thinking about those learning outcomes that Andrea mentioned, maybe you have some choices for them and how they complete these tasks. Now, if you are a less techie person or you have students who struggle using technology or have bad internet connection, there's plenty of low-tech options too. I know a lot of schools provide agendas for students, but you can also get any of these free templates. I got them all from Canva, and I went ahead and uploaded them to Google Drive. So if you're in our slide deck, you can just click on this to get your own copy. These could be put into Jamboard or Google Slides, or you could print them out and send them home for your students so that they have some paper pencil activities. And I love just the different layouts of these and that you can make them whatever you want. This one is really broken down into a daily schedule, so students have to think about morning, afternoon, and night, which I think can be really helpful for some students. What do I need to complete during the day, and what fun things do I get to do later on? And then there's some more broad, weekly schedules. And here's just some more examples of what some choice boards and schedules can look like for the upper grades. Now, this is one of my favorite tools that might also be helpful for you as a teacher, but your students in 3-5 might be great at using technology. We have some digital tools already built into our Google applications that you can start teaching them how to use. So we're actually going to give this a try together. Google Keep is a note-taking app that you have, and Google Tasks is a to-do list that you have on your sidebar. So in any of your Google applications, you'll notice their little icons are here on the sidebar. I'll show you what mine looks like. I'm going to come out of present mode here. So you'll see them right here on the side of Google Slides or Jamboard or whatever application you're in. So Google Keep, which takes notes, allows you to take notes on whatever you like, and it stores it all in one place. Now, one of the reasons I love this tool so much, and it can be great for an asynchronous activity with your students, you can actually take notes on this specific slide and attach it to it. And that will be your private note. Nobody else will see it, but it'll stay there for you, and it will stay next to that slide so you remember where you were taking notes on this. It's a great tool for days like today when you're attending a lot of sessions and you want to remember what was going on. So we're going to practice that. If you want to open this up, and we're going to click Take a Note, and you'll notice the slide is here. So if you don't want it attached to this slide, you can remove by clicking the X there. But I'd like you to just jot down a note of something that has sparked an idea for you today. Give you just a moment to do that. And then whenever you're done, you can click the Done button, and you'll notice it just stays there on the side. So now at any point, if I wanted to return back to that, I can just open my Keep again, and my note is there. And the source of where I took that note and why I took it is linked for me there. So imagine that as a powerful note-taking tool for your students during asynchronous or synchronous lessons, that they can keep a journal of their thinking. And they maybe copy and paste it or screenshot it for you if you need some accountability. Now, the other tool, again, this would pair very well with Google Calendar. If you have your classroom calendar set up, your students can learn to press tasks. And again, we're going to practice this together because I use it often as well as a running to-do list on my busy days. So I'm going to click Add a Task. And we're all going to remind ourselves to send some gratitude to a colleague today. And then you simply press Enter, and it will pop down to the next list for you. However, you can also click Edit, the little pencil button, and you can add details. You can organize multiple to-do lists if you'd like, but I specifically love that you can add a date and time. And so I'm going to do that. I want to make sure I send some gratitude to somebody today. So I'm going to make sure I have that done by 2:30 today. I'm going to click OK. You can also add subtasks. So if it's a larger project, your students can learn to break that task down into multiple steps, right? And again, this might take some scaffolding. You might need to teach them how to do that, but then eventually they'll be able to do that on their own. So I'm just going to go back now, and now I've got it here on my to-do list. And then I just close it and my sidebars pop down. So I just love that that's such a practical tool for our students that's already built in for them. Go back into our present mode. And then the final activity or idea I have to share with you, Google actually just came out with this in the new year. They created some student-friendly calendars and agendas within Google Slides. So I have a link to this at the end, as well as a video tutorial that they made that walks you through how to use this. But this allows for students to add in some digital tasks. They can add stickers in just to make it a little bit more engaging for them. Again, this might be something that you have to scaffold. Maybe you set it up for your students and put in some tasks for them, but then they have the ability to edit or modify it as they need. So here's just another example of a daily breakdown, which again could be very helpful for a hybrid setting when they need to really think about how their day is going to be different on the days that they go to school versus the days that they're at home, and what their schedule is going to look like. And adding in times, when do I need to get up? When do I need to be out the door? Or when do I need to be online starting my lessons? And then adding some space for reflection at the end of each day. They also have class calendars, so you might, again, set this up for your students. They can add in goals and big projects that they need to accomplish. This could be a way to get them started. All right, I want to give us a little bit of time to reflect. We are going to, let me get the links for these. I want you to think about what are some independent skills that your students already practice that will support a transition to hybrid. As Anna mentioned earlier, we want to build on skills that our students already have. We don't want to reinvent the wheel. We want to find their passions and their motivations and build off of that. So we are going to share some successes in one Jamboard. I'll paste that here, or you can click on the link yourself if you're in our slide deck. And then what supports will your students still need to cultivate their capacity for independence? So what will they need more help with? We'll give you about 3 minutes to complete this. It'll be quick.
I think it's really wonderful to see just the wealth of ideas, of skills your students already have. Um, it's nice to bring light to this and to celebrate this. And perhaps as you're looking at this, you're also saying, oh, hey, I didn't even think of that skill that my colleague put up on the board. But yes, this is absolutely a skill that my students already have. So as we're wrapping up our final minutes together, I do want you to encourage you to maybe keep this Jamboard open and to continue to look at the information that your colleagues are populating. It's always really wonderful to have a space to learn from our colleagues, even if it is virtual. And I also wanted to bring your attention to one other reflection tool that you might consider either using yourself or perhaps bringing to your staff site to use with your colleagues at your school. So here we have this image that you can see on the right-hand side is a reflection tool that is about fostering or expanding opportunities to build competence for our students. And again, on this reflection doc, we give you an opportunity to focus on that cognitive competence and the emotional competence of students, because we know that those are going to be really paramount as we think about transitioning to hybrid. So if you would like to use this, you can just click on that graphic and it'll force you to make a copy, so you'll have your own copy. This tool is really great because it can help you brainstorm into how am I going to begin integrating some of these skills and these tools. But there's also a column that encourages you to reflect on how am I going to provide feedback for my students? How am I going to reinforce these skills as they begin to develop them, which we know is a really important aspect of motivating our students and really encouraging that agency and self-perception. So we have about 2 minutes left. I know that Rachel has put in a couple of resources on the next slide. We encourage you to explore those at your convenience and again, share these with your staff. And also just before we close, if you have any questions, you can either use the chat or just unmute. But we just want to really extend a really deep bow of gratitude for all of you and the hard work you're doing and your willingness to spend some time with us here this morning. We really appreciate you.